To be honest, I didn't think I was going to write a book about this. But while I was in there, I had an inspiration. For faith-based people, they would say I had a voice saying you would write a book about this. At that time, I was disturbed about the fact that I'm going to write a book because at the beginning of the captivity experience, it was something that you would think should not have happened. You know, there is this thing about, oh, if I'm serving God, I shouldn't fall into this sort of issues. So I was a bit disappointed that I'm in that situation and then I'm going to write a book about it. So I said, what am I going to write? That I was kidnapped and I had to pay ransom. But as I progressed in captivity, the reasons for the book having to be written became evident to me. So, but that was the initial reason or motivation to write in the book. But when I came out and I began to piece together information about kidnapping, banditry, and people's desensitized approach to some of these things, it then occurred to me that I needed to document and make it as graphic as possible so that people can be woken from their slumber. So people's minds and conscience can be pricked that this actually happens. You know, when you have gone through these experiences and you come out, there's so much detail that you don't say. And not saying those details sort of abstracts the graphic details from the minds of people. So I decided I was going to write a book to capture the details so people exactly know what goes on when such criminality happens. So those are the two main motivations for me. And if I may say, the third motivation was I had to repeat the story several times. And I said, okay, maybe I'm just going to write this book. So when you ask me the details, I would ask you to go and read the book. So you will find details in the book because there were several conversations, some pleasant, some not so pleasant. The Waheg boy, as I called him in the book, is one of the rotating group of 9 young men who were guarding me all through my captivity. So there will be usually 3 people per shift, and there will be 3 shifts in a day. So I had 9 boys guarding me. And Waheg boy was particularly interesting because he engaged me the most. That's what I called him because I didn't know his name. So he engaged me the most. From when I got in there, he gave me the first piece of advice about how to deal with his boss. And then regularly he would talk to me about situational issues and all of that. So what did I gather from him and the environment that I found myself? I find myself that criminals, like the rest of us, rationalize their criminality. And number 2 thing that I found out from him is that we have the capacity to compartmentalize our lifestyle. So Nigerians are multiple personality beings. You know, we say dual personality. We are multiple in our personality. So the way you see somebody in a church or a mosque, that's pretty much not who he is at work. That's not who he is at home. That's not who he is in the presence of his friends. So, and we sort of compartmentalize these different personalities because these guys, one of them or 2 of them were talking about how when they finish their shift, they're going to take some girls out and have a drink. You know, they're going to. So they simply take up criminality as an occupation, and they go back to their normal lives. So people compartmentalize their lives, and there are different things at different places. And some of the other conversations that I had is that there is no we already knew this, but it became evident that because of the lack of social safety nets, you find a lot of younger people tipping into crime. Because the way crime works is that they welcome you, provide your most basic needs, and then they introduce you to the criminality. If you had a social safety net in Nigeria, maybe half or more than half of people that are going into criminality would not have to go. Because then they can have foster homes, they can have free education, they can have basic sustainability issues dealt with. My Waheg boy was referring to his life on the street as a circumstantial thing. He had lost his parents. He said he never knew them. And he had a grandmother who looked after him till he was 5, and the grandmother passed away. So since age 5, he had been on the street. So for him, anybody who extends an helping hand will become his family, no matter what they tell him to do. And if you look around Nigeria today, destitution and poverty drive most people into unsavory places. And those are some of the conversations that sort of help me to look at the things that are happening, criminality and banditry, from the perpetrator's eyes. Not necessarily from a moral angle. It's just, this is the way these guys think. It's neither for them right or wrong. It's a question of survival. My kidnap is commonly referred to as targeted or profiled kidnapping, meaning that they came to my home, they broke through my home. At that time, I was living in Port Harcourt. So they arrived just after midnight, jumped in over the fence, and I only knew that something was happening when I heard sounds that made it look like they were breaking down something. So they were actually pulling out one of the burglary proofs from the wall, and that was the only way they could have entered. So when I went down and I saw them, my first instinct was to assume that they were area boys trying to sort of steal a few things. But immediately afterwards, I realized that these ones were more serious, because when I was engaging them, they shot into the place. And I then changed my platitudes into supplicatory. So I began to say, guys, it never reached like that. Make I open the door for now, may I enter. But anyway, so that's the story of my kidnap. They came in, profiled me, knew who they wanted, and then after robbing us, which I realized was part of the process. So they were the people that come to, for my own, the chain was long, and I realized again that criminality is sophisticated in the most part. So the people that picked me up, they were who I call the advanced party. Then they handed me over to the transportation party, who handed me over to the keeper before I had to talk to the negotiator. And these people almost didn't know what was going on in the other compartments. So the advanced party, as part of their booty, they were allowed to rob and take valuables away. So they robbed us blind, and then they took me. So there are two questions. What do I think is the cause? The cause is not one. There are multiple causes, and there are different, there are incremental causes over time. What people point to mostly is poverty. But my defense or my argument against poverty is, why are the rest of the poor people not kidnapping or robbing people? The other people say, economic factors and all that. And I say again, why is it that only parts or a section of the population is doing this? There are other people who are impacted by the dire economic situation of Nigeria. Why didn't they take to criminality? And so many questions, so many reasons come up, but I say, look, that's not enough. What I find that is the reason for this, as with all criminality, is one, greed, and two, dependence on substance abuse. And third, outside causes now, secondary causes. We have a problem with drugs and betting. When somebody is dependent on a substance, they will find a way to fuel that lifestyle, which moves them into a category of a tip, or somebody that can tip into crime. On this other side of the divide, they will say, poverty and desperation, which I say it's not enough. So what are the real causes? One, I say severally, because when I came out, I began to look at these factors. One factor that I see is, one, lack of lack of respect for human lives, which I say is lack of humanity. The second cause is lack of values or a value system, or absence or loss of it. And the third point is the loss of a sense of community. I'll try and explain if I have the time to do so. If I respect you as a human being, I would apply the golden rule: do unto the other people what you want them to do unto you. So for those who amplify poverty and economic, tightness as a reason for criminality, not just in kidnapping, but in all forms of criminality, corruption, misuse of office, and all of that, I say to them that if you apply this rule, would you have loved to be kidnapped? If the answer is no, then you cannot justify kidnapping another person. And you can use that same rule for everything that we do. Something I say around the sword that I've embarked on, is that Nigerians don't understand how to calculate second order or order costs. When I came out, people were only asking me, "Oh, so how much did you pay?" They were not asking me, what is the second degree cost erosion in my life? They were not asking me how much is the value of stuff they took. They were not asking me the psychological cost of having been kidnapped. They were not asking me the migratory consequences. So I was sharing in the book panel that if we had to shut down all the things we were doing in Port Harcourt, 100 people will have lost their jobs. So we took the viewpoint that, okay, let's leave the things that can run without us. Even at that, about 40 people lost their jobs. These are 40 breadwinners, so to say. My businesses that were shut down pay taxes to the government. So we don't look at these costs. And so we gloss over the real consequences. So these three causes for me: lack of humanity, loss of moral values, and a sense of community or communal living, is what has driven us to this point. This doesn't seem to people as, oh, these are the causes. But when you x-ray every symptom along these three causal factors, you find out that those are the issues. The Waheg boy, when his grandmother died, in the community that I remember growing up in, the community would take care of him. They would ensure that he goes to school. They would ensure that so the family unit, the extended family unit and the community will provide that. One cause, again, is rural-urban migration. So when you live where you are known and you come to a place where you are not known, if you fall on hard times, you are on your own. Now, because the government doesn't have a social welfare system, you are nobody. So this Waheg boy would have been taken off the street by the community if they had provided for him. So when we lose the sense of community, the victim of that loss becomes most probably a criminal, and he begins to inflict pain on the community. What does that do? It's a chicken and egg situation. If you are taking him out, you will have saved one criminal. Because you didn't take him out, you have added one criminal who perpetrates the same crime, kills somebody's father or mother, and that person also now goes onto the streets, and that cycle continues.